Let's get one thing straight right off the bat. The more you crave being liked, the more of your mind you give away. The more you chase approval, the further you drift from who you really are. And look, that's not some dramatic idea I came up with. It's the brutal observation of a man who looked at power and human nature without flinching. That man was Niccolò Machiavelli. He wasn't a saint, and he wasn't just some cold cynic either. He simply saw things as they were. To him, most people weren't guided by truth, but by how things looked. Not by virtue, but by fear. He dared to put into words what most people are too afraid to even think. And one of his clearest insights was, this society doesn't want you free. It wants you obedient. It wants you to nod, smile, fit in, to blend. Because if you're blending, you're not questioning. If you're smiling, you're not confronting. Machiavelli saw the truth. Most people still run from the more sociable you try to be, the more you flatten your mind to fit into the room. Real thinking, it isolates. It cuts through the noise, burns through the lies, and strips you bare. And most people, they don't want that. They'd rather be fake and accepted than real and alone. But Machiavelli didn't write for the crowd. He wrote for those rare minds that want to rule themselves. And if you're still here, still watching, maybe that kind of mind is waking up in you. Let's stop pretending. Every social interaction comes with a price. You force a smile when you're uneasy. You nod when you'd rather speak up. You say sure when you really mean absolutely not, just to keep the peace. And every time you do that, a little part of you gets traded away. A drop of clarity swapped out for a moment of comfort. Then you wonder why you're drained after a party, why you feel distant, even when you're surrounded by people, why your own voice inside your head is getting harder to hear. It's because you've spent all your energy talking for them and whispering to yourself. You're not evolving, you're adapting. You're shrinking. You're shaving off the sharp parts of who you are just to fit in until eventually, there's nothing left to sand down. You fit perfectly. And you're gone. The world loves that version of you. The version that doesn't make noise. The one that's easy to manage. Because when your mind gets quiet, you're easier to steer, easier to sell to, easier to ignore. Machiavelli warned us, he said, in politics and in life. The appearance of virtue often matters more than virtue itself. But hidden in that statement is something even more dangerous. When you start living for appearances, you start forgetting how to live with depth. And the deeper you were before, the more painful that loss becomes. Because once you turn yourself into something easily consumed, you stop being nourishing. You stop being real. So every time you socialize just to be liked, you step away from yourself and toward the herd. Every fake laugh, every handshake you regret, every silence you keep to protect your image, these things add up. Brick by brick, you build a cage. A cage that from the outside looks like success, popularity, charm. But from the inside, it's slow decay, mental rot. You stop even noticing it, and that's the real tragedy. You think you're doing great because people are smiling at you. But they're not smiling at you. They're smiling at the character you're playing. And that's when it happens. That's when stupidity takes hold. Not because you've lost intelligence or skill, but because you've stopped thinking from your center. You've handed over your judgment to the group. And the group, let's be real, doesn't care about truth. It cares about comfort, about sameness, about predictability. The group doesn't want your insight. It wants your silence. It wants you to play your role. Be the funny one, the agreeable one, the safe one. But don't you dare be the one who reminds others of what they've given up. Don't you dare be the mirror. Because if you are, they'll turn on you, not because you're wrong, but because you're right. You'll become the presence that makes them squirm. Not because you're loud, but because you're honest. Because you see clearly. So what do? You stay quiet. You nod. You laugh when expected. And each time your thoughts get duller, not overnight, slowly, like a knife that cuts less and less until it's just a blunt object. That spark you used to have, it gets replaced by pleasantries. Your bold questions turn into cliches. Your wild dreams market-tested and safe now. And worst of all, you don't fight it. Because stupidity, real creeping stupidity, has a secret trick. It makes you feel smart while you're conforming. It tells you, look at you. You're doing great. Everyone likes you. And that voice, it drowns out everything else, including the roar of your real self. That self used to want more, used to question, challenge, rebel. But now you want approval. You want likes, acceptance, belonging. And what's the price of that? Your clarity, your soul, your silence. Machiavelli said that people are moved by love and fear. But in today's world, there's a third force: validation. We want to be validated so badly, we'll betray ourselves for a thumbs up, for a little heart emoji, for a seat at someone else's table. You'll start repeating ideas that aren't yours, agreeing with things you never believed, just to avoid being the odd one out. Then you go home and wonder why your thoughts feel like static. You call it depression, you call it anxiety, and maybe it is. Or maybe, just maybe, you've overdosed on being social. You've been breathing in too much groupthink, and now your mind can't breathe by itself anymore. This isn't a call to become a hermit. It's a call to recover your own signal, to hear yourself again, to move without asking for permission, to be without needing applause. Machiavelli never begged to be liked. He wrote as if you were ready to hear the truth. And if you weren't, he didn't care. That's the kind of self-respect we've lost. These days, people want to be liked, followed, celebrated. But true intelligence, it doesn't ask to be understood. It doesn't even care. It radiates. And that glow, it scares people. It divides rooms. It doesn't ask permission. It just is. And when that presence enters the room, when you walk in with that clarity, you don't need to say a word. People feel it. Some will avoid you. Others will attack you. But a few will know. They'll feel the power of someone who didn't bend. When someone with that kind of clarity walks into a room, the mood shifts. Not because they're trying to dominate anyone, not because they're loud or flashy, but because they can't be bent. They aren't trying to impress. They aren't trying to win approval. And that kind of presence, it unsettles people because it can't be controlled. That's when you'll start to notice the labels. People will say you're cold, arrogant, detached. You've changed, they'll mutter. But what they're really saying is, you remind me of everything I gave up. Your presence makes their compromises harder to ignore. It stings, not because you've hurt them, but because they've silenced themselves for so long they forgot what honesty looks like. And now they can't unsee it. Here's the test. Will you dull yourself again to make them feel comfortable? Or will you stay sharp? Will you let the room adjust to you instead of reshaping yourself every time someone flinches? Most people can't do it. That's why the average person is easy to predict, easy to entertain, easy to lead. They've trained themselves to stay shallow, to avoid depth, to keep their thoughts within the lines and their words within the script. They've confused politeness with wisdom. They've mistaken being liked for being real. And that right there is where stupidity finds its perfect host. It doesn't need chaos. It doesn't need ignorance. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it looks like charisma, sociability, being the life of the party. Everyone loves them, but under the surface, there's nothing left. Just echoes, just rot. And here you are facing a choice. One you've been putting off. Will you keep kneeling to comfort, keep pleasing crowds that don't even know you? Or will you finally sharpen the blade of your mind and cut through the noise? Are you willing to be misunderstood, to be disliked, misread, rejected, Not because you failed, but because you refused to become someone else's reflection. That's where real power begins. Not over others, not through control, but through complete ownership of yourself. No guilt, no apologies. Just a steady fire in your chest that doesn't need an audience to burn. Not everyone will like that version of you. In fact, most won't. That's the cost. But that's also the reward. Because when you choose sovereignty over sociability, something begins to shift. You stop networking. You start nourishing. You stop chasing applause. You start seeking solitude. And solitude, when you choose it not when it's forced on you, but when it's a decision, becomes a forge, a crucible. It burns away everything fake, everything borrowed, everything that doesn't belong to you. And what's left? Something terrifying, something powerful, something real. If you're still here, still tracking every word, then maybe you're feeling it already. Maybe you're starting to pull away from the act, from the mask. Maybe you're ready to trade comfort for clarity, trade noise for stillness, trade social approval for self-respect. But be warned, this isn't a temporary shift. Once you wake up, you don't go back. Once the fracture happens, it deepens. You'll feel it in places you didn't expect. Every time someone makes small talk, you'll feel a little jolt. Every time someone fakes a laugh, you'll see it, hear it, and it'll sting. Every time someone tries to nudge you back into the performance, something inside you will rebel. Not out of ego, not out of pride, but because something ancient inside you has opened its eyes, and it can't close them again. That's the part of you Machiavelli was speaking to all those centuries ago. The part that craves clarity more than comfort, that knows real power comes not from control, but from independence. The kind of independence that doesn't need applause, doesn't flinch under pressure, doesn't chase status or popularity. That kind of clarity, it's dangerous. Not because it hurts others, but because it shatters illusions. The system we live in, it's built on politeness, conformity, polite lies. It runs on unspoken contracts. Don't look too closely. Don't speak too loudly. Don't think too deeply. You were never built for that. But you've been trained into it. Conditioned to clap when you should question, to smile when you should speak, to nod when your instincts scream no. And every time you obey that script, your edge dulls. Your thoughts get quieter. Your soul starts to play along, until one day you forget what it was like to think just for yourself. Now your mind is for show. A stage, a collection of thoughts shaped by what the crowd wants. You start speaking to perform, not to understand. Thinking for effect, not for truth. And eventually you get tired. But not the kind of tired you can fix with sleep. It's deeper. A weariness of the soul. That's when you start to want out. Not to vanish, but to detach. To stop bending, to stop apologizing, to stop molding yourself into something digestible, to be in the world, but not owned by it. Visible, but not desperate. Known, but not predictable. That's Machiavellian detachment. That's the art of playing the game without becoming the game. Smile, but don't kneel. Speak, but don't chase validation. Show strength, not need. Because here's the truth the world won't admit. It doesn't respect need. It devours it. It feeds on your desperation to be liked. And the more you show that hunger, the more it uses you. But if you can walk away, if you can carry yourself without needing their approval, that's when things change. That's when people start to adjust to you. Not because you demanded it, but because you stopped chasing them. The sovereign mind stands out, not because it's loud, but because it can't be caught. It's not everywhere. It's not on display. That absence, that distance, that's what creates respect. And respect, that quiet, unspoken acknowledgement, is worth more than any applause. Because most people don't know how to handle someone they can't mold. They call you cold, distant, intimidating. But what they really mean is, you make me feel small. You make me feel like I've been living someone else's script. Your clarity becomes their discomfort. And now, you face the ultimate test. Will you soften again, just to make them feel better? Or will you stand in your truth, even if the room grows cold? It's not an easy path. But it's the only one that leads to you. Most won't take that path. Most won't risk being the odd one out, the one who makes others uncomfortable just by being real. That's why the average person is so easy to decode, so easy to flatter, persuade, lead. They've trained themselves not to think too hard, not to speak too honestly, not to live too freely. They're scared of what might happen if they step out of line. And in that fear, stupidity finds a home. It's a quiet kind of stupidity, not the loud, obvious kind. It wears a good suit, knows how to shake hands, smiles at all the right times. But underneath, there's nothing sharp left. Nothing real. Just a mind that's been traded for comfort. And now, here you are, at the edge of that same decision. Will you kneel again, just to make things smooth? Or will you stand tall and sharpen your own mind, no matter who doesn't like it? Will you let yourself be misunderstood? Be seen as too much, too intense, too cold? Not because you failed, but because you finally refused to play along. That refusal is where everything changes. That's the doorway Machiavelli pointed toward, not a path of domination, but one of self-command. He wasn't writing for tyrants. He was writing for those who wanted to be free on the inside, even when the world was trying to tame them. And freedom like that, it's rare. It doesn't come with celebration. Doesn't get applauded. It gets resisted, feared, misjudged. You'll see it happen fast. You'll say no when others expect a yes. You'll walk away from conversations that feel fake. You'll stop explaining yourself, stop oversharing, stop begging to be seen. And people will notice. Some will admire it from afar. Most won't understand it. A few will feel threatened by it. Let them. Their reactions aren't your burden to carry. Clarity always comes with a cost, but it's worth it. Because once you've paid that price, something else begins to bloom peace. A kind of peace that doesn't depend on being liked. Confidence that doesn't need compliments to survive. An identity that doesn't tremble when people withdraw their approval. You begin to feel solid-rooted, unshakable. Machiavelli understood that most people are weak, not because they lack intelligence, but because they can't hold the truth in their hands without looking away. They need it, sugar-coated, wrapped in comfort, dressed up in illusion. He didn't judge them for it. He just didn't write for them, and now neither do you. The philosophy in your hands right now, it isn't the polished, watered-down version you see online. It's not about hustling your way to success. It's not about charming everyone in the room. It's about choosing clarity even when it hurts. And yes, it will hurt. The first time you say no and someone walks away. The first time you share an unpopular opinion and people look at you differently. The first time you stop laughing at jokes you don't find funny and the room feels colder. That's when the shedding begins. That's when the mask starts to fall apart. And when the smoke clears, you'll be raw, confused, quiet. But that silence, that's where the real self starts to speak. This isn't the kind of transformation you post about. It's not glamorous. It's not a glow-up. It's gritty, lonely, sharp. But it's the only way to reclaim your mind, to clean off the noise that's been layered over your thoughts since the day you learned how to perform. And performance, when it becomes a habit, is poison. You start forgetting where the mask ends and where you begin. You catch yourself saying things just to keep people happy. You start scanning the room before you speak, trying to calculate what version of yourself will be the most well-received. But eventually, that wears you down. Your soul wasn't built to run PR campaigns. It was built to burn, to think, to question. To wake others up not by shouting, but by refusing to be fake. So when the world offers you the same old deals, visibility in exchange for your truth, popularity in exchange for your peace, applause in exchange for your independence, you'll smile. Not because you're tempted, but because you've seen the cost. You've felt the weight of being liked by everyone and known by no one. That version of you, the sociable one. The one who said yes when you meant no, who laughed just to be included, who repeated what others said so you wouldn't stand out. That version had to die. Quietly. Alone. As it should be. Because real rebirth doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with silence. It comes in those moments when you choose not to speak, not to perform, not to chase. And in that silence, something powerful grows. That's the moment people start to notice. You're not louder. You're not more aggressive. You're just there. Present. Clear. And they don't know what to do with you. Because you don't need them like you used to. You no longer laugh just to keep the peace. You no longer soften your words to avoid conflict. You don't need to prove your depth anymore. You just are. That presence, that stillness, that refusal to bend, it speaks louder than any performance ever could. And people will feel it. Some will drift away confused. Some will talk about you behind your back. Some will say you're distant, arrogant, antisocial. Let them. You're not here to feed their illusions. You're here to burn yours. Ask yourself, who am I performing for? Who gains from this version of me? Who loses? Usually the answer is you. You lose your voice, your clarity, your fire. You betray yourself over and over for handshakes and hollow smiles. And each time you get a little further from your truth. Until one day, you wake up with the life you thought you wanted, friends, followers, maybe even power, and feel completely lost. Your mind feels like a stranger. Your thoughts feel rehearsed. Your joy feels manufactured. That's the cost of being sociable. But now you've tasted something else. Something sharper. Something more real. And once you've tasted that, once you've glimpsed what it's like to live, without asking for permission, you can't go back. You won't laugh at the same small talk. You won't smile the same fake smile. You won't say yes when every part of you is screaming no. Because now you know the price. Now you feel what it cost you. You've escaped the loop. The endless cycle of performing, pleasing, pretending. And once you've stepped out, it's impossible to forget how fake it all felt. You're not perfect. You're not finished. But you're free. And that freedom, that wild, unsettling clarity, it changes everything. Once you know what freedom tastes like, you can't untaste it. You won't be able to sit in rooms filled with small talk and pretend you're entertained. You won't be able to nod along when your instincts are screaming. You won't smile out of obligation, not anymore. Because you've seen behind the curtain. You've seen what sociability really costs. And you've chosen something else. Something quieter. Something stronger. You've stepped off the stage. You no longer need a role in their play because now you're the author. You write the lines. You decide the pace. You choose what matters. And that kind of presence, it's magnetic, but not in the way people think. It doesn't draw everyone in. It draws the right ones. The ones who recognize truth when they feel it. The ones who've also been burned by pretense and are done playing. And now that you've claimed that kind of presence, you protect it. You build walls around your mind, not to shut people out, but to keep yourself from being diluted. You stop handing out access to just anyone. You stop explaining yourself to those who only want your image, not your essence. Let them talk. Let them walk away. Let them misjudge. Every time someone misunderstands you, it's not a problem, it's a filter. It filters out those who were only ever drawn to the version of you that was easy, compliant, agreeable. What's left is real. What's left sees you. And if no one does, even better. Because that's when you finally see you, not the version you tried to perform into existence, not the curated mask you built to survive, but the raw self underneath it all. The consciousness that never needed applause, never needed permission, never needed to perform. This isn't glamorous. It's not romantic, it's ruthless, but it's real. And it's the only path that leads to something unbreakable: self-command. That's the source of true power. Not the kind that shouts or intimidates, but the kind that walks into a room and makes people adjust without saying a word. The kind that exists even in silence. But be warned, this clarity must be defended. It's not a one-time decision. The world will try to pull you back with noise, with guilt, with sweet distractions. That's why clarity requires discipline. The kind of discipline that says no to the drama you once found thrilling. The kind that turns down invitations that once made you feel important. The kind that slowly burns off the fake enthusiasm you once wore like armor. And in that stillness, something profound happens. You stop needing to be entertained. You become the source of your own energy. You become your own reference point. Every word becomes sharper. Every decision more deliberate. Every relationship more intentional. Not because you're isolating, but because you're finally living on your own terms. You're no longer exposing your mind like it's public property. You're no longer throwing your thoughts into the crowd for validation. You've remembered something vital: your mind is a weapon, and weapons aren't toys. Not everyone deserves to wield them. Not everyone even deserves to witness them. That shift will scare people. They'll sense it. Even if you don't say a word, they'll feel the difference. The distance. The refusal to play along. Understand, this being misunderstood is not a flaw. It's a filter, a gift. It separates the ones who see you from the ones who only see what they want. Every time someone misreads you, the path clears a little more. Every rejection burns away the camouflage. Every silence reveals what and who really matters. You won't be admired by the crowd. You'll be avoided, misjudged, talked about. Good. Because in that space, in that emptiness, where others used to fill you up with noise, you finally meet yourself. The real you. The one that doesn't need to pretend. The one that doesn't care about fitting in. The one that was buried under the pressure to perform. This is not some clean, inspirational arc. It's not a movie montage. It's brutal. It's solitary. But it's also the birthplace of everything real. You were never meant to be a clone of the crowd. You were never meant to echo the herd. You were meant to disrupt, to disturb, to confront. But to do that, you have to stop being sociable, not stop being kind, not stop being human, but stop being fake. Stop choosing connection over truth. Stop confusing attention with affection. Let people walk away. Let them gossip. Let them think they know you. You're not here to defend their illusions. You're here to burn your own. And when you do, when you finally stop feeding the lie, you'll feel it. That shift. That raw clarity that slices through everything false. You'll wake up with a life that isn't filled with noise, but with depth. Maybe fewer people. Maybe fewer smiles. But more truth. And in that truth, you stop being a machine. You stop being a product. You stop being a reaction. You become a cause, a creator, a sovereign mind. You won't need to explain it. You'll just live it. You'll say no more often. You'll choose silence over performance. You'll build strength instead of begging for support. And people will start to adjust, not because you convinced them, but because you became unbending. Machiavelli once said, "It's better to be feared than loved if you can't be both." But when your mind becomes sovereign, you don't need to be feared or loved. You don't need anything. You simply demand space. You move through life without chasing applause. And that distance you create, that space between you and the crowd, it turns into respect. And if people don't say it out loud, they'll still feel it. You're different. Not better, just sovereign. Not louder, just rooted. And in that quiet certainty, stupidity dies. Not because you've become cold, but because you've stopped being confused. You've stopped asking the world to tell you who you are. You remember now, a mind that can't be owned is the most dangerous force in existence. So from now on, be feared. Not because you're cruel, but because you're clear. Not because you dominate, but because you cannot be owned. Your silence will echo longer than their noise. Your absence will speak louder than your presence ever did. That's not mystery. That's not mystique. That's power. And not the kind you buy in books or learn in meetings, but the kind that comes from hunger denied, from discipline maintained, from truths held even when the world begged for a lie. You've betrayed yourself before for laughs, for comfort, for survival. But you buried that version quietly, without a eulogy. That's what rebirth really looks like. So the next time the world offers you comfort in exchange for your clarity, smile. Not because you're tempted, but because you remember how loud the prison was, how cheap the praise felt, how stupid you had to pretend to be. And you'll know you're done pretending. Most people age, but they don't evolve. They get more polished, not more profound. More social, not more self-aware. But you've chosen the path few dare to walk. The harder path, the lonelier one. And that choice, it makes you untouchable. Because you've escaped the loop. You're not perfect, you're not finished, but you're free. And once you've tasted that, nothing else will ever be enough.